Thank you for tuning in and welcome back to the Sandwich of Coherency. So, let's just go ahead and jump right into this. As I'm sure you're aware, you couldn't have missed it. Our president's been out and about, and unfortunately they've let him out of the White House, and he's been going to other nations, and he has been speaking. Let's be honest with ourselves. The United States does not have a president. There's no question about that. What the United States has is a bunch of shadow puppets whose faces we have seen but don't know which one is pulling the most strings, but they are the ones that are pulling the strings. Joe Biden is not the guy in charge. Could you say, based on the policies and the way the United States has been going through this administration, that the vice president is calling the shots? Because based on her public appearances, I would not doubt that if you said it. I could believe that. Because the policies right now coming out of the White House are so bonehead, they're on par with what she says publicly. But then again, what the current president says publicly is just as bad. I mean, it is just as terrible. This guy is not all there. Now that might sound like I'm being mean and whatnot, but no, I'm just being honest. This guy, he should not be in office. Again, I've said it before and I'll keep saying it. This is elderly abuse. He should be somewhere resting his bones in peace at his house in Delaware, watching swans or something. But making decisions that put lives at risk, I do not think so. I cannot go along with that. And it's gotten so bad that, as I've played from many news stations around the world, they're even focusing in on that. And you got to understand that the world leaders around the world are focused in on it as well. Absolutely. Their citizens are paying close attention to the fact that, holy crap, we thought the United States was strong and would be able to help in a time of need, but they have a potato in the White House, and I don't know, the spud is rotten. Because it is. This guy is far gone. But I'm going to play you just a little bit from Sky News, because fortunately they're kind enough to cover things that for some reason most of the American media, especially on the left, won't play for you. They don't want you to hear such things because apparently they want you to think that Joe Biden is a strong leader, despite the fact that he is fragile and weak. And I'm not saying that as an insult. That is just a observation of the obvious. So let's just go ahead and jump right into this.
Well, Congressman Ronnie Jackson has continued his warpath of President Joe Biden. The former physician to the White House gave a bleak review of Biden as the president took the world stage this week amid ongoing tensions with Russia and Ukraine. He tweeted, "Biden is unable to articulate the major foreign policy objectives of his administration. Every time he tries, the White House swoops in to correct what he said. He has no idea what's going on. His cognitive decline is too much. Time to resign." This comes after the fact Joe Biden has been in hot water the last few days after he said President Vladimir Putin cannot remain in power.
For God's sake, this man cannot remain in power.
He's been accused of further escalating tensions by making that comment, sending the White House into overdrive as it walks back on what the president meant. When he was asked about whether he regrets what he said, the president was reading off a cheat sheet prepared for him by his government.
He did. And many of us saw it. And the sad part is this isn't the first time they've done it. And he says that, it's his own personal opinion that Russia needs a regime change. Like, that really matters. All that matters to anyone around the world that heard that is that the president, and this is how many will take it, kind of threw a threat at the Russian president. That's pretty much what that was. He threw a jab at him. basically saying, somebody needs to remove you from office. I'm not saying who, but I mean, that's something people should be thinking about. Yeah, that is a threat. And that's how they'll take it. That's how the world is taking it. White House doesn't want you to think that's what it was, but I mean, whether or not it was, it's not something he should have said. So that's another one of his gaffes that seems to be putting lives at risk. So I ask again, do you really think this man should be making decisions that put lives at risk? You've got a former White House physician even calling for the guy to have a cognitive test. This is not playing games anymore. This is not just, bouncing a ball. Let's pat a beach ball or some nonsense like that. This is not something that's lighthearted. The increase in prices, the terrible policies, everything has taken this country towards the bottom. And they can say all day long, our economy is booming. No, it's not. It's actually not. No matter how many times you tell that lie, it doesn't make it true. I mean, you have less people working than when the pandemic started, but you somehow say we created more jobs and more people are back to work than there was before the pandemic. That's obviously BS. So just because you keep saying the lie doesn't make it true. But let's continue with the rest of this little clip and let's just give it a little listen.
Ronny Jackson has been calling for Joe Biden to take a cognitive exam to prove he is sound of mind since June last year. He frequently tweets that the president needs the exam in order to remain as leader, the same way Donald Trump was asked to sit one in 2018 after he was accused of suffering a mental decline. One of the main concerns with Joe Biden is the fact that he never speaks off the cuff, and when he does, an example being when he said Russia needed a change in power, all hell breaks loose. He either doesn't want to take questions or his team refuses to let him do so. Just today, the president was speaking at a conference with Singapore's Prime Minister when he said he would take one question from each reporter before calling on his pre-approved list.
Now, we each agreed we'd take one question, and I'll recognize someone first. Darlene Superville, Associated Press.
Yeah. That's the United States president. And the important thing you have to understand, it's not just a matter of his gaffes, his misspeak, getting the United States into situations. If the United States gets into one of these situations, it's going to want other countries to get into it with them. That's how that works. So the rest of the world is looking at this because if Joe Biden's mistakes get the United States into a conflict it doesn't need to be in, it's going to expect other countries to commit to their word and assist the United States in conflicts. So that's what some countries, our allies, are looking at. But then you have to look at the people that the United States could get into conflict with. And those that would back the United States enemies. Let's be honest. Nobody wants to get into a conflict. As much as they would want to get into battle with the United States, they don't want it coming to their own shores. So they can wish hate on the United States all they want, but please stay in your country. Do not come over here to ours and start wrecking our things. But nonetheless, they would be forced to join whichever enemy they committed their word to assist. And now you have a whole bunch of countries in a war that nobody needs to be in and could have been absolutely avoided most likely if the president wasn't such a potato and making so many mistakes that put lives at risk. Now, aside from just his failed and terrible speech, which potentially puts people at risk, it does put people at risk, but we're not going to just say that the worst is going to happen. We're going to say that, okay, hopefully we can get past this and no one will see this as a reason to escalate things. But aside from that, he's also got his budget, because the Democrats love to spend money that they don't have. And that's why we're going to listen to a little bit of Miss Lauren Boebert speaking to Biden's budget director about how much money the Biden administration wants to spend that they don't have. And when you hear these numbers, it's going to absolutely blow your mind, because we know it's 30 trillion. I mean, the House Budget Committee has even pointed out it's 30 trillion. Every office pretty much that analyzes U.S. finances has pointed out it's 30 trillion. We're more along the lines of 30.8, but Biden's budget director somehow it's got some really fishy numbers here. So let's just go ahead and jump right into this, because what Lauren Boebert does is, it's not really so much as a question session as much as it's I'm just going to throw these jabs at you because you came here to waste my time.
How much does each taxpayer, thank you, how much does each taxpayer owe to cover our current $30 trillion debt, not $24 trillion?
And I'm sorry, I have 22.3, so I'll correct myself downward since we're using different numbers. Again, we don't calculate the debt by a person, including my
Reclaiming my time, excuse me, Director. The answer is $242,500 per taxpayer.
Now, in the beginning, and that's the part I didn't play because Ms. Boebert's mic wasn't on at the moment, so it really made the sound really off. But according to the budget director, that's not how debt works. And she is correct. That is not really how debt works. But they use those calculations like that to give you an idea of how bad government spending is. So government spending is so bad that $242,000 is the going rate that each United States citizen of 330 plus million people would have to pay to break even. For the United States to break even and be out of debt, all 330 plus million people need to pay about $242,000 in debt. And see, the thing is, as more and more money gets spent, the price goes higher and higher and higher. And it just keeps getting worse. But I'm going to let her continue.
In America. Now, you may have been on track with some of these answers if your numbers were correct with the $30 trillion debt that we actually are at right now. But I would have hoped that you would have the correct answers in your position to all of these questions, as the president and this regime really should keep this debt at the forefront of our thinking in proposing a budget. But this budget that was created is proposed to spend another $5.8 trillion this fiscal year and $73 trillion over the next 10 years. And sadly, it's pretty apparent that you're more concerned with continuing to spend trillions of dollars of taxpayer money on liberal wish lists rather than doing anything substantive to rein in wasteful federal government spending. Now, I've said multiple times, the federal government does not have a revenue problem. It has a spending problem. Now, Director Young, Biden likes to say, show me your budget and I'll tell you your values. So let's see what Democrats really value. The word military appears 26 times in this budget, but gender, it's used 43 times in your budget. Equity, well, that's used 75 times. And climate is used 187 times in this budget. And Americans sure do understand what Democrat priorities are and their values. They know that the real cost of these woke policies and so-called values are impacting them. And the bill has come due for these bad Democrat policies. Proposing to spend trillions of dollars on more woke wants, not needs, is absolutely shameful. And really, you should be embarrassed to be testifying today and trying to defend this $5.8 trillion budget.
I'm gonna pause right there real quick, because what's important about that is that most of that money that they put in there for all those programs and such and whatnot don't actually go to the people. So these are to what they do, create quote unquote jobs, programs, new offices and whatnot. And these places need staff. So a huge portion of the money that gets allocated to programs goes to the creation of those offices and to paying of the staff. It's not a matter of we distribute, we don't distribute the money first and then we base the salaries and pay and whatnot of the federal employees, accordingly from that. No. It's federal employees first. And, as we found out recently, that for some reason about 98% of all federal employees, for some reason, had 100% as doing great on their performance reviews. So they all get raises. Didn't Congress just give themselves a raise or something like that? I could be wrong about that one, but I think they did something to give themselves more money. In a time like this, but this is what it's all about. All they do is spend. It's spend, because that's about all they know how to do, and it's just to pay themselves. Again, 20 years ago, the budget was about 1 point something trillion. And in that 20 years, the United States population has only grown 16%. Yet our budget has gone fourfold. On a 16% population increase, we went from 1.8 trillion or something like that to 5.8 trillion. That's what they want to propose. I'm going to play this last bit because it gets even better.
Now, during the State of the Union, Joe Biden said that his plan to fight inflation was for businesses to simply lower their costs, not their wages. Director Young, I'm a small business owner, and I can tell you that that's not how it works in the real world. I understand that we use Washington, D.C. math here, but that's not how it works for real small business owners. Meat is up 13%. Milk is up almost 12%. Electricity is up 9%. Now, as a restaurant owner, how am I supposed to lower my costs if everything that I use is going up? And I certainly wouldn't be able to pay employees higher wages. So with this skyrocketing inflation that's taking place, Madam Director, can you please simply define to me what inflation is?
Sure. The cost of goods are more expensive. It costs more for the same goods than it did last year. The president is very aware of that. That is why he called on Congress to send him legislation.
Reclaiming my time. Thank you, Director. That's not exactly where I was getting at. Let me answer this for you. So Milton Friedman, who won the Nobel Prize in economics, said that inflation comes from too much money being printed in DC. Specifically, and I quote, he said, inflation is a result of too much money and more rapid increase in the quantity of money than an output. Moreover, in the modern era, the important next step to recognize that today governments control the quantity of money so that as a result, inflation in the United States is made in Washington and nowhere else. So Director Young, in short, inflation comes from Washington, D.C., where the products we use aren't created, but the products we use are made more expensive. Director Young, shamefully, this Biden budget proposes the largest tax increase in American history. And I really think that bears repeating. It is the largest in American history. The Biden regime either has no concept of how inflation is impacting Americans or simply has no concept for Americans who find the cost of gasoline too expensive because, after all, they can't just go buy a Tesla. How about that?
Largest tax increase in American history. $73 trillion proposed to be spent over the next 10 years. They want to spend $5.8 trillion this fiscal year. And again, this is the question we're asking. Where are they getting this money from? As we asked before, where does the Biden administration keep its endless money supply? Largest tax increase in American history. And you truly think that that's going to be just the upper class, the rich as you call them? You don't think that's going to trickle down to the middle and lower class? Has been talking with Rick Scott, Biden's budget director, said that it's going to be paid for by taxing the wealthy and the corporations. That's how we're going to pay for the $5.8 trillion debt. And if you believe that, that's lunacy. But even more so, that's kind of messed up. Whether you like or have whether or not you have a problem with people getting successful by whatever means they use to get there, to agree that the U.S. government should be allowed to pick out a single group of people that they want to take stuff from because they want to take stuff from them, that's another big problem. It doesn't matter, what you think about that, because if you are okay with them doing it, picking out one group, don't think that you won't be on the chopping block one day. Sure, yeah, you can go along with it and be happy because the guy you like is the one that's in office. But what happens when he's not there anymore? What happens when you've set that precedent of being able to pick and choose whom you want to bully out of their stuff today? It could be you. It really could be you. So you have to think about the further implications that has. But let's go back and not forget $73 trillion. Where exactly do they plan to get that money? You could take every penny from every wealthy person in the United States. You could take every penny from every corporation in the United States. And I'm talking anyone that has, say, $500,000 and up in the United States. All of them. Every single citizen. Every major corporation. Every business in the United States. You could take all of their money and you wouldn't meet the $5.8 trillion budget proposal. You would be nowhere near close to the $73 trillion budget they want to spend over the course of the next 10 years, because that's based on this idea of these people they want to take from ever increasing their wealth in a way that the government wants so they can take it from them. So you got to ask yourself, if they want to spend $73 trillion over the course of the next 10 years is what they want to put in place, you're okay with them doing that to people? That money's not going to always be there. It's going to disappear. They're going to come after you. The middle and lower class, you might think your taxes are not going up, but as you've seen, they don't have to take it out of your paycheck. Have you seen the prices of things going up? This is the beauty of inflation for them. You'll pay higher prices, and when they decide to pull the money supply, well, it works out better for them. They've got everything, and you've got nothing. country is going in a downward spiral, and we have to admit that it is the fault of the president and the Democrats that back him. This is not to say that the citizens of the United States, that all Democrats are in line with these policies, but we're just talking about the politicians that claim to represent the constituents. They've proved their dishonesty, and they prove that they are not worthy of the positions that they hold. And they have shown time and time again that they don't deserve to be there. So just keep that in mind as we round ourselves around the bend towards November elections, midterms as you will call them. Just keep that in mind, that the Democrats, if they have their way, would bankrupt the United States to feel pious about themselves. But I thank you for tuning in, and we'll catch you next time.